How's it going? This is Blessing Christian Lifestyle. How's it going? This is Anthony, and today we're going to go over Jesus visiting his hometown. All right, so Jesus visits his hometown. All right, so Jesus first gets baptized at the Jordan River, and then he gets tempted by Satan when he does his 40-day fast. And then here in the book of Luke, he's going to go back to his hometown. All right. So we're going to see what happens when he goes back to his hometown. These are a lot of people that he grew up with, um, the rabbis, local rabbis, the local synagogue, and he's going to visit here. And he's actually going to read out of the scripture. All right. And he's going to proclaim that, hey, the scripture's about him. And then we're going to see the reaction to that. Now, remember, because he's in his hometown, people see him as Joseph's son, right? Son of Mary, son of Joseph. There's Jesus. We all knew him growing up. Like we all. So that's pretty much how they see him. So they don't see him as the Messiah just yet. They just see him as, isn't this Joseph's son? Like, who's his other father? All right, God, his father. All right, God in heaven. All right, so we're just gonna go straight into it. Luke chapter 4, verse 14. Then Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee, and the news of him went out through all the surrounding region. And he taught in their synagogues, being glorified by all. So he's going back to the synagogues. All right. So he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. So Jesus goes to his local synagogue, and he on the Sabbath day he stood up to read. And he was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found a place where it was written. So remember, Jesus, he's just going, fulfilling prophecy after prophecy. Now, in this case, he's actually going to get the book of Isaiah and he's going to read out of it. And it's like, oh, okay, he's going to read out of the book of Isaiah. But really, he's reading about himself. Like, hey, I'm a point to where the Old Testament, it talks about me. That's what Jesus is about to do here, which is a huge deal. All right, so here Jesus is going to read publicly, and Jesus reads this: The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. So Jesus is in the synagogue and he reads this. All right. How's it going? Shelly Myers. How's it going? God bless. So Jesus is in his local synagogue where he grew up and he reads this out of the book of Isaiah in the Old Testament. And then here he goes. Then he closed the book and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all who were in the synagogue were fixed on him. So everybody's looking right at him, like, all right, like that's all you're going to read, really? And he began to say to them, Today, this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. So what he just read, he said, Today, that is being fulfilled. So all bore witness to him and marveled at the gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. And they said, Is this not Joseph's son? So remember, this is his local town. They saw him grow up. They're like, Isn't this Joseph's son? Like, we know Joseph, and Mary and his siblings. Like, this is Joseph's son, and he's proclaiming to be more than Joseph's son. So here he says, He said to them, You will surely say this proverb to me, Physician, heal yourself. Whatever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in your country. So the miracles, so like, hey, you did miracles in Capernaum. Surely you can do them here too. Then he said, Surely I say to you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. So he's in his hometown and he's saying, hey, no prophet is accepted in his home country, pretty much his hometown. But I tell you truly, many widows were in Israel in the day of Elijah, when the heaven was shut up 3 years and 6 months, and there was a great famine throughout all the land. But to none of them was Elijah sent except to Zarephath in the region of Sidon, to a woman who was a widow. And many lepers were in Israel in the time of Elijah the prophet, and none of them were cleansed except Naaman the Syrian. All right, so now he just pretty much going. So all those in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath, and rose up and thrust him out of the city, and they led him to the brow of the hill on which their city was built, that they might throw him down over the cliff. Then passing through the midst of them, he went his way. So pretty much they were gonna push him off the cliff in his hometown. All right. So Jesus was rejected in his hometown after he read in the synagogue out of the book of Isaiah. So that is huge. All right. And that's the book of Luke, chapter 4, verse 14. Jesus gets rejected in his hometown. All right. They literally walk him to a cliff and they're about to push him over. And rose up, thrust him out of the city, and they led him to a brow of the hill on which their city was built, that they might throw him down over the cliff. Then passing through the midst of them, he went his way. For it wasn't his time. All right. Jesus knew, like, hey, Jesus knew ahead of time how he was gonna die. All right. And it wasn't his time. So he just pretty much passed them through. Like he pretty much just walked off. So that is how Jesus was received in his hometown. All right. He was rejected. He was rejected in his hometown. All right. Hometown of Nazareth. All right. And that's huge. All right. That is huge. And he's literally reading out of the Old Testament about himself. All right. Again, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he has anointed me. Jesus was anointed to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted. Jesus heals the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind. Jesus did, um, all right, heal sight, to set liberty to those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. So the year of the Lord is now. That's pretty much what he's saying. And then he says, and he began to say to them, today the scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. And people had a problem with that. All right. They're like, you mean to say that you are mentioned in the Old Testament, which is a huge, a huge claim, but it's not like Jesus ended up fulfilling the prophecies. All right. He ended up fulfilling the prophecies. And that is, you know, that's what makes it true that he fulfilled the prophecies. And that's what the book of Matthew, when you read the book of Matthew, it says, as it was said in the book of so and so, he fulfilled that prophecy. And the book of Matthew is just prophecy after prophecy. All right. So that is the book of Luke, chapter 4, verse 12, all the way to 29. All right. Jesus going into his hometown. Thank you very much for being on. Donovan Bailey, thank you very much for being on. Donovan Bailey. Let's see. Write some notes. All right. Thank you very much for being on. Shayla Myers, thank you very much for being on. All right. Just get on here for a little bit. I'll read a chapter. And I think I'm gonna start another video and I'm gonna read a different chapter. All right. Thank you very much for being on. All right. God bless y'all. Thank you very much.